Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome to the end of the Ultimate Era. This is the penultimate episode. I can't believe it, we're already here. We are continuing into a new era of the Ultimates. And if you missed the last two episodes, make sure to check those out to witness the arrival of the Maker. And check out my video on Ultimate United We Stand, Divided We Fall, when Captain America became the President of the United States, to catch up to where we are in the final era of the universe. Released in 2012, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, with art by Carmine Di Giandomenico, this is The Ultimates Disassembled. So, just bringing you up to speed on where we are at this point, this is following the Maker's return from the negative zone in Ultimate Enemies trilogy, Ultimate Doomsday trilogy, and the creation of the city and his children of tomorrow. He attacks the United States. Steve Rogers is elected president after the country falls apart. The Second American Civil War occurs. Thor's evil son leads the succession movement, and at this point now, Reconstruction is taking place in the United States. Eventually, Steve Rogers abstains and gives up being president, claiming that he was just a war president and he really doesn't know how to continue these efforts, and that the country needs someone new, who is seemingly Barack Obama, I guess. It kind of lines up with where the timeline is at this point. So that's kind of where we're at now. The Ultimates are back. S.H.I.E.L.D. is now being run by Monica Chang, the new Black Widow. There's a bit of a sparkful of hope, a glimmer, if you will, in everyone's eye that things are gonna work, and the broken pieces that fell apart are gonna be glued back together, and everything will be not how it was before, but better. The story begins 1 mile beneath the Triskelion. Bruce Banner wakes up in his brand new cell. Maybe Forge designed it before he died. A strange voice echoes through the room, introducing itself as a friend from another time and place who has come with a proposition. Bruce begs the figure to just leave, because the harness attached to him pumps so many sedatives that he can't even Hulk out, and if he did, it would immediately poison him. But the voice laughs and then utterly destroys the harness, freeing him, and explains that he is among the best that the human race has to offer, and invites him to come destroy those who continually use and imprison him. Upstairs in the Triskelion, Tony meets with Sue Storm, Thor, Hawkeye, Captain America, and director Monica Chang regarding a pretty big issue that they recently discovered. The Infinity Gems. Now, I should give you probably like a general outline and origin of the Infinity Gauntlet, and gauntlets, actually, there's two of them, in the Ultimate Universe, because as far as I can tell and kind of remember, just from everything that's happening at this time, I don't think there's a proper explanation, and if there is, I've just missed it, and you can let me know in the comments how I was wrong. And there's barely one in this comic, so here we go. So a few issues ago, the Ultimates, during the Reconstruction era, the post-Ultimate Civil War era, Sue meets with Thor regarding his evil son Modi, and how he used one of the Infinity Gems to command certain humans in his army. The Mind Gem, you know, kind of like Loki in the movie. Sue reveals to Thor and the reader that S.H.I.E.L.D. have actually had two other gems in their containment and possession this whole time, and that they've been contained into some sort of golden gauntlet, which is not really a gauntlet, it's a glove. And we've actually seen this gauntlet earlier in Ultimate Mystery at Project Pegasus, so that's a neat little tidbit, I guess. So with these three gems in store, Sue and Thor set off to find the fourth one. They accidentally get teleported to a secret Hydra base where they have the second gauntlet housed, and they continue their search into the following months. Sue has noted that each seem to be born out of trauma to the Earth itself, a Paleolithic extinction, Ragnarok, Atlantis, and Lemuria sinking. And more recently, it's been tied to the Ultimatum event. Tony asks if these ultra-powerful rocks that have been embedded into two gloves just kind of appear spontaneously when something terrible happens on Earth, and Sue suggests that they're more like scar tissues forming to prevent infection like a scab. Thor brings up Asgardian histories on the subject, specifically legends of dark and powerful items that he always thought were simply fairy tales. But they're interrupted when Monica alerts him that the Hulk has escaped, and the entire Triskelion erupts. It's a great drinking game. Sue contains them all in a force field and lands them away from the ruin headquarters as it entirely collapses into a fiery ruin. Tony realizes that the gauntlets with the Infinity Gems inside were left behind, and the Hulk lands before them, wearing the gauntlets. And he snarls that he is finally going to have his revenge. Captain America demands that Bruce calm his ass down because he just killed over 5,000 people, and Hulk laughs wildly, telling him that they couldn't punish him before, and they definitely can't punish him now. Thor flies into an attack as Tony orders his sentient brain tumor Anthony to get their Hulkbuster suit online and him in it immediately. But Hulk simply smirks as he uses the power of the gems to make himself grow in size and grabs Thor, nearly caving in his head until he rockets the Norse god away. Hawkeye unleashes explosive arrows into Hulk's face and Iron Man blasts him, causing the Hulk to dissipate in flesh and muscle to the bone like a proto-immortal Hulk. And he swings his crooked head back and smiles maniacally. Then he screams and thunderclaps and explodes them all away. As Sue Storm stops the Force from taking her and Monica, she tells Tony that the Hulk isn't even using the gauntlets. Then the brand new Hulkbuster arrives and Anthony commands it. Tony orders a Hulk, very well done, and Anthony unleashes the full might of the suit. Hulk's gray muscles ripple and cook and bubble with the might of the heat as he screams in absolute pain, and boils explode and reform from his healing factor kicking in. His flesh melts from the very muscle and bone until he is nothing but a clump of boiling thick flesh and meat. Cap immediately steps into action, rips the gauntlets as he orders assistance with Banner and commands Hawkeye and Tony to begin search and rescue. But then the ruined Hulk corpse disappears, and Hulk appears behind Cap, chuckling to himself. Captain America calls him a utter disgrace and demands that he stop screwing around. But a voice screams to stop, and the voice tells them that this is all beneath them. And Reed Richards, the Maker, appears from the wreckage, wielding a gauntlet. He apologizes for the ruse and letting things get a bit too far out of hand. He just had to make sure everything was ready. Flashback time, about 20 minutes ago. Reed is released from his taffy candy pulling machine prison by the mysterious voice. Reed tells the voice that if what they say is true, he will do anything to ensure that the world becomes better and that humanity is saved. The figure tells him that this universe has been doomed since the day that Reed set foot in the end zone. But the Infinity Gems can fix his mistake. And across the world, Quicksilver arrives at the ruins of the city and retrieves one of the Infinity Gems, meaning that there are only 2 left to obtain. And back in the present, Reed smiles wildly as he monologues and informs the Ultimates and Sue that the gems will fix everything. No longer will this be a world of confusion and death and misery. If they just let him fix everything, none of this will happen again. Pietro arrives and hands the gem over to Reed, and he implants it into the gauntlet and uses the reality-bending powers to reform his suit and once more become the Maker. Captain America tells Reed that they beat him before and they can do it again. Reed looks at him through his partial vision and tells them that it's time to end this. And he unleashes the power of the 4 gems upon all of them. Everyone screams in pain as they fall to the ground. Anthony freaks out in fear and agony as Cap leaps like he was drawn by Jack Kirby and socks the Maker in the face, only to get his forearm ensnared. Jesus Christ! Oh my god. Cap orders Thor to teleport everyone out of here immediately. Thor reluctantly leaves Steve behind as he saves the others, and Hulk returns and bashes Cap into the ground. Maker smiles and tells them that they can now save the universe. Then the voice emerges from above them and explains that she has seen the future and the past. And she tells them that she knows exactly how the Ultimates will act now that they only have 2 gems and Captain America is their prisoner. But she assures them that one by one, the Ultimates will fall. Then she finally arrives down to them and explains that this group of Dark Ultimates are the only hope that the universe has. Because Kang will not let this world die again. Only a day and a half later, the Dark Ultimates have already enacted their plan, led by the face of the Maker as he continues to broadcast their message across the world. Global changes on an ecological, political, and sociological level to ensure the longevity of the planet and the galaxy as a whole for humanity, as well as the existence of their very universe. They have negotiated global peace, and any nations that refuse are dealt with minimum loss of innocent lives by Reed's new Herbietron soldiers, which are just an insane looking combination of Ultron and Herbie, and I love it. Global patents and copyright standards have been undone, so anybody can use Mickey Mouse. All concepts, designs, and progress are public domain, baby, meaning that Stark, Roxxon, and Hammer Industries are all being liberated to ensure a collaborative, innovative future for mankind. A Stark technology called the Sentient Seed is distributed through the world, and Reed has modified it to produce fruit and vegetables at an unprecedented rate, ending world hunger. The World Banking headquarters in Washington, D.C. is raided, all debt is erased, financial blocks removed, all currency is worth nothing more than the paper it's printed on. The mutant community has been allied with the assistance in distributing the sentient seed around the world, with new variants created by genius mutants who are allowed to be free and exist in this concurrent community. The San Onofre nuclear power plant, along with every other one, has begun undergoing renovations to create zero-emission hybrid energy tech within densely populated areas. Reed and Bruce Banner have created the graphene polymer solar technology to utterly replace fossil fuels. And Reed concludes his broadcast that this was all done within 24 hours. They will continue to improve the world and make amends for all the wrongs that they have committed. And he finishes by giving a message directly to the Ultimates. This is how you save the world. At an off-the-books Stark Tech warehouse, Thor smashes the screen in anger as Tony works on a suit. Tony tells Thor to calm his blonde locks because he's working on a way to free Steve and stop the Dark Ultimates. Anthony contacts him that the encryption that Reed added to Stark systems would require about 500 years to undo, or a solar system-sized supercomputer to crack. Monica rocks up and jokes that Tony is a better father to his sentient brain tumor than Nick Fury ever was to her kid. She notes that most of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s major assets have gone offline and are in Dark Ultimate's control, and Fury has not been heard from in 36 hours. Tony tells them that they need to move because Banner has been here before, so eventually the Dark Ultimates will find them. Thor tells them that he's tired of running and hiding. He just wants to kill Reed Richards after all the pain and suffering he's caused him, and teleports away. A few hours later, at Aleph 1, Reed Richards' new fortress above the former site of the Baxter Building in Manhattan, Reed commands the Herbitrons to secure Saudi Arabia as a Herbitron eco team continues purifying the Ganges River, among many, many other operations he's all controlling at a single time. Then Sue appears and tells Reed that Monica sent her here to reason with him, although Sue thinks it was a waste of time. Instead, she's decided to come here to tell Reed that she's not afraid of him, because he's nothing more than a man-child who became a bully in a dumb costume. And she knows his physiology and readies herself as Reed tries to attack her like a monstrous mess of spaghetti. Reed laughs that he's not even technically alive anymore, and asks what she could possibly do to him. Then they're interrupted by Ben Grimm, the human guy. Ben asks his wife, Sue, if this creep is bothering her, and unleashes his cosmic energy for clobbering time. Sue begins unhooking connections to Reed's machines, ridiculing him for not going wireless, and the entire system shuts off. Reed shouts that he has thousands of backups as Ben clobbers his dome across the room and begins turning back into his Rocky form on command to really fuck up his former best friend. He calls Reed an absolute monster, and he has this coming in spades. 42 stories below them, Hawkeye works to free Steve from the weird chain prison that they've put him in. Then everything wipes away as Kang appears. She tells him it's been a long time and apologizes for what she's about to do as she uses her powers to strangle Clint. Meanwhile, outside of Tucson, Arizona, Thor sits in a bar getting drunk, or at least trying to, when a figure walks in wearing very specific colors. He sits down beside the former God of Thunder and tells him he looks like shit and makes fun of him for the harness and power suit he has to once again wear. Just like the good old days, when everyone thought he was some lunatic with a god delusion. Thor sighs and welcomes Dr. Banner to the bar and tells him that his words don't hurt nor make him fearful. Then Banner hulks out and erupts, and Thor simply takes another drink. So Hulk slams him in his face. Hulk begins rippling with energy as his new Hulk suit forms, and Thor simply wipes his mouth from the blood and beer froth and commands everyone to leave the building immediately. He waits as Hulk snarls at him and brings down a massive rupture of lightning. Hulk erupts in his Maul from Image Comics cosplay as Kang tortures Hawkeye, and Ben and Sue work to defeat Reed. Meanwhile, Tony and Anthony go back and forth on why the last gem would be here of all places. Anthony tells him that his readings are as clear as can be. It's not a fluke. It's true, as weird as it is. And Tony wonders how the hell he had a weapon of mass destruction of unknowable power buried beneath a warehouse for years without realizing it. and he finishes his work on his iron gauntlet. Tony calls Monica into the workshop and explains that it's hopefully a simple solution. The power gem is buried beneath Nebraska, and as Tony explains how they can reach it, Anthony screams in pain and goes silent. Tony's forehead begins bleeding, and he weakly calls to Anthony and falls to the floor as Monica is clocked by Quicksilver. And Quicksilver prepares to collect Tony Stark as the Infinity Gem that is embedded in Tony's brain glows righteously through his skull. That's right, you might not have known it, but his brain tumor this whole time has been an Infinity Gem. Not long after, Quicksilver delivers Tony to the Maker and he's forced to undergo brain surgery. Reed laughs that he always wanted to be like Tony. Cool, smart, rich, always had a woman in one hand and a genius invention in the other. But now he looks back and simply laughs. Because Reed is now over 1,000 years old. He's leagues ahead of anything Tony or his late brother ever could hope to accomplish. And unlike Tony, Reed works effortlessly to make a gateway to the future. Tony speaks through gritted teeth as he undergoes the ultimate pain and suffering and pleads with him to stop what he's doing. But Reed tells him that won't happen. They're at a precipice, the event horizon of all reality, which hinges upon the actions taken in these coming days. Tony huffs that Reed is fucking insane, and Reed retorts that he truly wishes he was. Instead, he simply sees things logically. Tony tells him that he'll never win, he'll never be loved. And Reed slips with his prodding fingers into Tony's brain. He tells Tony that he truly wishes that their relationship was different. Tony gags and gargles in pain as a lobotomy is performed upon him and begs Reed again to stop, but it falls on deaf, malformed ears as Reed continues the operation and fully removes the Infinity Gem from Tony's brain. Meanwhile, Ben destroys Reed in the main control center, and he and Sue kiss in bittersweet victory as Reed and Tony watch on screen. Reed smirks and asks if it would spoil their little moment if he reveals that they just defeated a very small segment of his body, that he grew into a full-sized replica, a thing he can do now. Reed calls Quicksilver over and orders him to incapacitate his former friend and girlfriend and get them into a holding cell. Ben and Sue work on escaping when Quicksilver shows up and immediately ruins their day. And he gets creative with their defeat because he gives Sue 1,000,000 paper cuts across her fucking body. She explodes with bloody cuts and passes out as Ben grabs her, and then Quicksilver erupts into him as she blacks out. Then Reed begins monologuing and lore dropping about one of his favorite concepts, the multiverse and stacked universes. And all that shit he theorized and had confirmed years ago when he met Annihilus. He describes the big crunch that the universe expands and then contracts, like a breathing lung. However, Reed doesn't believe it does so evenly. Instead, he proposes to hole-in-the-head Tony that the death of the universe is progressive, and that it speeds up the closer to the end it is, unless it has a treatment. The Infinity Gems. Reed continues that in all of his studies of the negative zone, the end zone, and every other level and letter, each one has an extinction event. Although the specifics are never clear, he tells Tony of his discovery of a negative counterpart to Earth. One where Annihilus has Planet of the Apes, the Statue of Liberty? Although we do get to see what Annihilus' race looks like beneath his armor, which is cool. Clever idea, I guess. Reed tells Tony that on this counter-Earth there existed a genius, a scientist, a Reed of their very own. This alien counter-Reed found the Infinity Gauntlet and focused his genius on canceling the apocalypse. But it was too late. The universe had entered the spiral of heat death. But real Reed can do it sooner. He helped create the gem. His doomsday attack was the start of a chain reaction, which has led them here to this point and their universe to the verge of destruction. And by his calculation, they are thousands of years ahead of schedule. It should not be happening like this. Tony asks what if he fails and causes the same outcome as this negative version. Reed tells him he's far smarter than that other Reed. And Tony asks him what came of the other Reed, and it's revealed. Sit down, if you're not already. He was transformed by the cosmic unknowable energies of the gems working in unison, and became an entirely new entity capable of existing on all levels of reality. A Watcher. Reed looks at the gem and smiles as he tells Tony that he will save their universe from destruction. Tony thinks it over, his brain quivering in the air, and tells Reed he's batshit crazy to think that he's meant to be some kind of pan-dimensional god. Tony reminds him that his so-called predecessor didn't save the universe. The negative zone is still dying. Reed knows that firsthand, because he's been there, and begs Reed to free him and at least let him help. But Reed shrieks that he will do no more talking, and removes Tony's Broca's area to keep him from speaking. Several hours later in Nebraska, at the retrieval site of the final gem, the Herbitrons work endlessly to excavate into the Earth itself, into whatever the hell this is. And in a prison cell, Clint wakes up to find Steve sitting across from him. Kang phases through the wall and welcomes Clint, and Steve leaps to his feet and grabs her by the throat. She dissipates, and he is slammed into the wall, as Steve shouts that they will escape this cage and take her and her little gang down with them. She rematerializes and assures him it's a very big cage. Then she phases the walls to be invisible, and they are revealed to be held in the negative zone. Meanwhile, at a secret SHIELD facility in Ithaca, New York, Monica is awoken by Nick Fury. He congratulates her on 1, getting clock cold by Quicksilver, and 2, giving away Tony to Reed Richards. She tells him to can it, and Fury smirks and asks if she's ready to kick Reed's little ass for the final time. She gets up and asks what kind of army he has that he thinks that will happen, and Fury leads her to his new Howling Commandos. Cassie Lang, Stature, Frank Castle the Punisher, Sam Wilson the Falcon, Danny Ketch the Ghost, Abigail Brand the Alien, Emil Blonsky the Abomination, Dum Dum Duggan, Field Commander, and Hercules. Several hours later, the Howling Commandos maneuver through occupied NYC towards Aleph 1 as Reed continues to torture and experiment upon Tony. He replaces the Brocas area and lets Tony speak because Reed felt seeing Tony not spout any nonsense or quips was too weird. He asks Tony how he thinks they will win this and defeat the Dark Ultimates. Tony tells him that they fought monsters, alien invasions, vampires, clones, alternate realities, and they've always won. And Tony agrees with Reed. They are stupid. They're too stupid to know when they're beat. And that makes them dangerous, because they will never give up. Then Reed shuts off the oxygen pumping into Tony's system and severs his spinal cord from the base of the neck down, stopping his heart and lungs, and tells Antonio Stark goodbye. Thor is finally retrieved and tossed into the negative zone prison cell as Kang inspects the corpse of Tony Stark. Reed assures her it was necessary to retrieve the gem, and she bites back that it was necessary to protect his ego. She reminds him that this wasn't about turning him into even more of a monster. This was about saving the universe. A Reed tells Reed that they're ready, and the Reed moves through the lab, followed by Kang, who tells him that the universe will come crumbling down soon as he's in his lab playing with himself like usual. And he tells her that he is their only hope. Reassures her that once they've finally extracted the final gem, reality itself will be theirs. Then he wires an artificial brainwave copy of Tony into the Herbitrons, breaking into Stark's armory in Stark Tower, and they connect it through to get past the security locks when everything goes haywire. And Iron Man appears as a hologram and ridicules them for falling for his trick and initiates a self-destruct of his entire Hall of Armor, and Stark Tower erupts in a massive blast. The Maker panics as he attempts to stop the brainwave from transmitting into the new Hulkbuster suit he designed, and he races to cover it with his body to shield against the transmission as Reed tries to figure out how Stark, a corpse, was able to do this. Elsewhere, the Howling Commandos have a full-scale battle against the Herbitrons as they march through the city. Quicksilver and Kang race through NYC. As she tries to speak with him, Pietro arrives at a hospital room at Mount Sinai, and Maker orders the body in the bed back to Aleph immediately. In the negative zone prison, Iron Man takes over the Herbitrons and frees the Ultimates as Quicksilver returns with Johnny Storm. Maker sets him on an operating table and, like an eldritch monstrosity, begins working overtime to turn him into a veritable android controlled by the Maker. And at Stark Tower, dozens and dozens of Iron Man suits combine together to form Iron Man. Not long after, in Nebraska, Quicksilver arrives with the Human Torch and sends him down into the fiery molten pits of the earth to retrieve the final gem as Reed remotely controls him and forces Johnny to go supernova. Meanwhile, the Commandos continue their push towards Aleph as Falcon alerts them that something just got launched from the station, and the Hulkbuster comes ripping straight for them. The Metal Titan is blasted by Iron Man as he rockets into it, angry that Reed ruined the final gift that Anthony had given him. Meanwhile, However, Iron Man also works to free the Ultimates from the Negative Zone prison. Monica helps a now partially blind Clint as Steve takes point. Iron Man is ripped apart by the Hulkbuster, but immediately reconstitutes himself as he arranges the rocket strike directly into the Hulkbuster. This is fucking insane. Aboard the Aleph, Maker holds Sue and Ben in stasis healing chambers while he simultaneously controls Human Torch, and among many other things, he's alerted that the end zone cell is empty and the Hulkbuster has gone offline. Kang demands that he actually concentrate himself on one thing, the final gem. Maker orders the other Hims to deal with the Ultimates and bring Banner back from overseas. Then Maker is alerted that the Human Torch has found it. Deep within the core of the Earth, Human Torch falls to his knees and retrieves the final Infinity Gem before he returns to Quicksilver, who races it back to New York. But not before he sees Reed's calculations. And although he's not the smartest in these microseconds, he can still do the math by sheer repetition. And after running the equations nearly 100,000 times, he saw what would happen if Reed Richards obtained the final gem. It would be a universe without mutants. And he escapes out into the city. When he's attacked by Kang, he demands to know who she really is, why she plans on committing utter genocide against his kind, and what her real plans are. She assures him that the presence of mutants will only move the world towards death faster, and that corrections must be made. He screams as she holds him down and pries the gem from his hands. She laughs and asks how many times he and his brotherhood tried to eradicate mankind, and assures him that mutants will still live, just as normal humans, free of the X-gene virus. And she fires a force-filled beam out of her head and directly into his chest. And she takes the final gem. Meanwhile, the Maker has a full-scale panic attack as he's lost utter control of Aleph 1 to Iron Man's digital consciousness. He reconstitutes himself as a singular entity and demands to know how the dead Tony Stark is doing this. Iron Man ridicules him for not being as smart as he thinks, noting that those decades of cosmic exposure from the gem just altered his neural network. Tony is plug and play. Reed panics as he tries to undo Iron Man's cyber attack of his systems when he's clobbered by Ben. Reed erupts endless tendrils and shouts that he is just trying to help them. Quicksilver picks himself up and witnesses Kang flying back to the Aleph, but instead of continuing his fight, he races across the world to Wanda's grave. And he falls against it, bleeding out, taking his final breaths. The Maker holds Ben and Sue captive as he commands all Herbitrons, Hulk, and Kang to return to Aleph 1 immediately. Then the power shuts off and Iron Man reappears behind him like a specter. And Tony tells him that he's not going to be doing much gloating as he reactivates the lights and all of the heroes surround Reed Richards. Tony tells him that this is checkmate when Kang arrives above them and incapacitates everyone. She tells him that she has traveled from the end of her own universe to ensure that this one survives. She removes her mask, and Sue watches in horror as Sue Storm looks down upon them. Flashback time. A week after Reed moved back in with his family following the ultimatum attack, he was visited by the spectral form of a older, disheveled, scarred Sue Storm. She informed him that his universe will die just as hers did if they don't work to stop it, and that Reed's last act was constructing the Kang suit and sending her here to start the beginning of the end early, before it's all too late. She tells him that the moment everything goes wrong is going to be occurring very soon, and then informs him about the gems, that they need to be found now. Reed refuses, so she grabs him and they erupt into a white void of her home reality. She tells him that this was her universe. Reed tells her that he doesn't believe her, and she smirks and tells him that that's why she always loved him. He's too smart for his own good. Then she tells him that they will do terrible things, but it's all in order to save reality. And then she kisses him. Back in the present, Kang and Maker stand over the ultimate heroes, and Sue unleashes a strike against them that frees the others. And in the funniest scene of this entire book, Maker teleports Hulk and Quicksilver, but Quicksilver's a dead body on the ground. And Reed is like, Quicksilver, what the fuck? Why is he dead? Hulk Hulk begins attacking Ben Grimm, hoping to get payback for that time in the Squadron Supreme universe, as Reed unleashes the Herbitrons on the Ultimates. But Iron Man immediately takes them over and causes them all to self-destruct, and Reed attacks him like a fucking monster. Iron Man instructs Fury to take his commandos 20 stories down and stop the Herbitron factory from making more units, as Kang laments not being able to kill Sue, but assures her that she will make her suffer. Sue asks how she could become such a monster, and Kang screams out that she is their savior. Then the Human Torch arrives, and Sue screams in shock over seeing what they did to her brother. She sends a force and clocks Johnny as Kang demands the gauntlets, but Maker demands the final gem. Sue, Kang, and Reed all make for the gem as Sue steals it from herself in a force field, and Captain America leaps through the air and grabs it. Iron Man enters Reed's ship and constructs a new Mjolnir and a battle suit for Thor out of Maker's future tech, and takes over the systems of the entire fleet over New York, and it is utterly destroyed by the God of Thunder. Hulk erupts after Ben, but the Ultimates all face off against him as a team, and Sue tries to wake up Johnny, now broken free from Reed's cybernetic control. Kang steals the gems out of the Maker's gauntlet. Then a massive explosion rocks the command station, and Johnny tells Reed to never lay a finger on his sister again. He uses his flames to propel the gems into Iron Man's suit, and he embeds them within his suit of armor. Iron Man makes quick work of using all of the gems in unison to resurrect himself and become outfitted in his new Infinity Iron armor. But using the gems like this at their full power causes a massive energy burst, and a deluge of otherworldly images, constructs, rips in the fabric of reality, events and copies of themselves from other times, dimensions, eras. The multiverse erupts around the Ultimates. Every version of every person present shifts and moves through the haze of absolute reality, and Kang announces that it is too late. The seams of reality are tearing apart. The incursions are coming. They failed. It is too late. She caresses Reed's cheek and tells him that the gauntlets are now useless, as the gems ripple energy through Tony's suit and then shatter completely. And Kang sighs heavily and laments having to go back further in hopes of saving this reality. But before she does, she walks to her other self and tells Sue that if she stays with Ben Grimm, their world will be doomed, because their destiny lies with Reed Richards and their son. She says goodbye and erupts from the timeline and reality, and Reed orders Aleph 1 to power down and land. Reed Richards, the Maker, cowers against the ground, lamenting the deaths that are coming. He chastises Tony for the energy flux, telling him that only the gauntlets could have held it, and that this is just the beginning of the end. He cries as he tells them that Tony Stark has now doomed them all, and he could have saved them. And several days later, S.H.I.E.L.D. regains control as Monica and Fury look over the city of New York. Fury notes that Richards did make things better. Monica reminds him that he's a genocidal maniac, and he's not even human. And Fury and the Commandos are set to leave for Europe at 1800 hours because the continent is in chaos. Fury tells her that whatever is coming, they can and will handle it. Later in the Cube holding facility, Sue meets Reed. He tells her that she will soon understand him. She will understand everything that he has done in these past years and what has occurred. She tells him that she'll never understand him. She asks why. Why did he do this when he could have done so much for the world? He's done this. And Reed doesn't say anything. And she continues and tells Reed about the news. She and Tony Stark are creating a new organization called the Future Foundation. And he asks if they've already begun detecting the anomalies. She confirms that they have. She confirms that they have, in the absolute furthest reaches of space that their resources can spot. Originally, they thought it was the Galactus swarm, but the readings all point to something bigger and more powerful. There was an explosion of other dimensional energy before this thing began moving towards Earth, and it has somehow sent them a message. The single word: hunger. The end. Wow. I hope you enjoyed this episode of what is this penultimate Ultimate Era. I loved it. Let me know what you thought of the final issues of the Ultimates series in the comments below. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I am a big fan. I loved it. I love the high concept insanity as it reaches its tail end of existence. Joshua Hale Fialkov is definitely one of my favorite writers from the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Everything I've read from his time in this world is just top tier. I'm a big fan of his work in this world, and he always gets paired up with great artists that I really like. And this was just such a monumental era in the Ultimate Universe because it's the veritable doorstep to Secret Wars. It's only about, what, like less than 3 years until the event, and you can really feel this universe winding down to something that is totally unlike anything Marvel had seen before. I mean, come on, Galactus got sent here during Age of Ultron, and everything just feels like it's ending. It feels like it's falling apart. The sort of motto that we've discovered of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, that sometimes things just fall apart. Tony also being the one to, like, you know, ruin and destroy the world works for this universe, as well as the 616, because, you know, he's the reason that the Illuminati exists. And the Illuminati of 616 begin taking the incursions into their own hands of preemptively striking these alternate worlds and Earths and destroying them before the collisions can take place. The Illuminati had such a big aspect, and it's great and fascinating how even in this alternate reality, Tony Stark is still playing a role, and it's also involving these Infinity Gems. I would love to know if there was like any behind the scenes, like, you know, back and forth between Hickman and some of the other writers of like this series or any of the other ones to lay those pieces, those crumbs that can trail back to the actual Secret Wars event. This was one of my favorite eras of Marvel Comics, was the Secret Wars event, and I really have no issues with this book. I love it from start to finish. Honestly, I kind of like it more than Hickman's proper run on the Ultimates. I just really like Fialkov's writing and his characterization and the ideas that he brings to this universe. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Ultimate FF, both the art and the story. However, if there is one thing I could change, it would be retconning Quicksilver working with Moira McTaggart, which is who is at the end of Ultimatum, you know, when it's revealed that he's like in that wood cabin or whatever at the very end of that event. Go check out the video if you haven't already. And then it appears like later in a later issue of Ultimate X-Men, I think Ultimate X-Men 97. Apparently they teamed up or something. I don't think it goes anywhere, but it would have just made way more sense if they retconned that female shadowy figure to have been Sue Storm, aka Kang. That's the one thing I would have added to this. I think that would have just really tied everything in together very well. And that could be like, oh, it's Sue when she goes back further than that. It's really not that far back, but it'd be really neat to tie it back in that way. Doesn't matter now. Universe is dead. No, never coming back. Who cares? But those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. And as always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey's videos, where you can view the final video of the Ultimate Era early on there as well. And all the other new videos I have coming next year, as well as all of my comics posted on there in high-quality images. I also have audio commentaries from movies and shows and more. Check out my Etsy shop, BlakeTWild.etsy.com, where you can purchase physical copies of all my books, and my podcast, the Comic Shtick Podcast, and I Need Some Disney. And yeah, that is about it. And this is really, it's sad, really, that the Ultimate Era is coming to a close next week. This is the penultimate episode. It has been such a journey that we have taken together, and I'm so thankful for everybody who's tuned in, who's still watching, and I can't wait to look back at it all in the next episode. Bye.